As the channel enters its second full year, I've wanted to start making some more advanced builds, since we've covered most of the basics. I started the last video by modifying this 30-year-old BMP-2, and honestly, I could have redesigned the entire kit. I'm modeling a destroyed BMP-2 that has been knocked out and consumed by a fire. To replicate the char left behind, I textured the interior with asphalt terrain paste by AK. And this is where I came to my first major choice. Like the last video, where I had to decide when to stop, my choice to model the interior exposed posed a slight problem. With no timeline, I would have painted this like an aircraft, finished the inside, then carefully masked off and painted the exterior. But this is a build for YouTube, and as such, it has a schedule to keep. As it is, I'm already a day late. But this has got me thinking about your builds, and perhaps why you even watch this channel. We all have busy schedules and other obligations. Building models is a luxury of time. So my goal has always been to share my skills to help you improve your builds. But I wanted to make it clear that I'm not building these models to be perfect. I'm building this so that you don't have to spend your time with trial and error to get the look you're going for. So let's get into it. You'll soon see why my choice to paint the model all at once compromises the quality of the build. But we'll get to that later. I started by alternating clear varnish, hairspray, and paint to build up layers of chips. Starting with this first layer of dark rust, I wanted to make the paint as thin as possible. This is important so you don't cover up all the work you've already built. Even though we're doing chipping in between each stage, you still want to see those layers of built up paint underneath. And this is the main reason I wanted to paint this model all at once. I wanted all of the paint to be cohesive and to match. Even though I'm not mixing paint, just wanted to make sure that I got all these layers exactly the same. You can even see that I've painted the fenders the exact same way I've painted the rest of the tank itself, even though that's not going to stay that color since those are aluminum. But we'll see more of that later. Another tricky part about building this tank in different sections is that all of these burn marks needed to match up. It's really important that after every layer, you varnish it with matte or satin, depending on the look you're going for. This is going to lock in all the work you've already done. For real hot spots on the burnt out areas, I painted some white and then some yellow here on the fender since there was a large amount of insulation in there, and I think it affects the way that the burn marks look. After that, everything was hit with a very thin black and chipped again. I could have done this over and over and over again, but again, it's just a matter of how many layers you want to put in. This is another example of a part of the tank that is a different material. The engine cover is also aluminum, and that affects how you weather the tank. This is where research and reference photos really help. Without knowing that information, there's no way to know how you need to weather a certain material. It's also a good idea to overmask so you don't get overspray on all the areas that you've already worked on, since this is a multi-paint paint job. For some reason, this area did not chip as well as I wanted it to, and pieces came off either not at all or bigger than I wanted. So you live and learn. Different paints are affected differently. If you didn't want to use the hairspray method, there's also the salt method, which you can see here. White undercoat, and then a light spray of black, and the water just pulls that salt right off. I did go back over with another layer of the black just to blend it all in. Next step was chipping, followed by a pin wash. I used streaking grime from AK, and a mixture of maybe bluer paint for the chips, since that looked like what the paint originally kind of looked like, and the faded areas on top would have a nice contrast with that. The hull was treated with some streaks, orange for the rusted areas, and streaking grime for the non-burnt out areas. Just use some white spirit to drag those streaks in an up and down motion, and feathered it out until it looked good. This was another reason I decided to keep the top half off of the hull of the tank so I could get better access to this area here. I also kept the tracks and wheels off until all of this was done. The tracks, however, gave me quite a bit of problems, and I would definitely recommend getting some workable metal tracks or 3D printed tracks if you were going to attempt this, because these old brittle plastic tracks just kept falling apart and pieces kept falling off of them until I almost threw them out. The rest of the hull was weathered in the usual way with some heavy mud texture, and then little by little some lighter texture paints and some aqualine here. But again, if you don't have these products, you can make your own texture paint with a little bit of sand, and you can use enamels or oils to get the look you're going for. All right, I had to make another choice here. I decided there was no way I was going to have the tracks loose as they kept breaking. You can see here. I had to mount this entire model to the base before I could continue. Except I decided just to mount the tracks to the base so that I could get the placement I was going for. I do leave them unattached so I can take the model off, so when I build the diorama for this, I don't have the tank in the way, but I had to make this choice so that I could get this track the right way, so when you saw it in the thumbnail and at the end of the video, it would look correct. But I wouldn't do this step now if I was just building this for my own sake. It did come out pretty good though, and I'm happy with eventually how I got the tracks to look. And off they go, and we need to paint them. And we're painting them in the exact same way. We're chipping. We started with white, then hairspray, and some light black to give it that charred look. And then we start in with the rust tones, so dark and lighter oranges. And then I gave everything a wash with the standard rust effects. And that is going to have more done to it when the model is in its diorama form and we do more of the base. Okay, this is where I wanted to show you that the choices I made ended up hampering the final product of the model. You can see along this seam here, and more importantly, this gap here, that I would have filled these much better. But since I already had paint on the model, I couldn't do much more than glue it in place to fix this seam. And that's just an unforeseen thing that resulted from building this model in separate pieces. So while it's not going to win any awards, I hope it at least shows you the process that you can do this yourself, and maybe you won't make this same mistake. All right, back to the video. I mixed my own oils since I didn't have the exact rusty tones that I was looking for. I put everything on a piece of cardboard before, so the linseed oil leaves the paint itself, and that results in a less shiny paint when you're done. This is kind of a filter slash streaks that I put on this, and I could have gone a lot further here and put even more layers, but again, I just want to show the basic principles of how I'm achieving this effect. That being said, I'm really happy with how this came out, and I will be adding a few more layers of different things once the base is in place. It's important to use the same dust and grime that you're going to use on the diorama as you do on the tank. So we'll get to that step later. Just adding some highlights and finishing up with some dust. This is light dust deposits from AK's Dust and Dirt Deposits line. Worked really well, and I love how it dries. I would definitely recommend that. So after some highlights and treating the weld beads with some graphite, it was on to the beauty shots. I've had a blast working on this, and I can't wait to see it in its final diorama. That's going to be next video, and that should be the last video before the end of the year. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching and all your support. I really, truly appreciate it, and I will see you next time. See ya.